j'ai aussi demandé à mon petit partner en design, Grace, en un mot, comment tu décris Phil? C'est ce qu'elle m'a dit. Tiramisu. Oh! Attention, il y a deux sens. Il y a le sens, il est aussi bon et délicieux qu'un dessert. Mais tiramisu, pour un Italien, la signification, c'est que c'est quelqu'un qui cheer you up. Et Phil est toujours quelqu'un qui cheer you up, peu importe c'est qui, peu importe où il va toujours être là to cheer you up. Alors voici, je vous présente Phil.
Wow! Merci Martine. Ça, c'est la meilleure intro que j'ai jamais eue dans ma vie. Incroyable. Merci beaucoup. Merci d'être là aujourd'hui. Je vais commencer par souhaiter tout le monde Happy New Year. Bonne année. Shilyan Kuala. Bon Chi Fa Kai. Merci Tom. J'ai demandé la semaine passée à MJ de m'imprimer en gros lettres. Le sport préféré de MJ, c'est de moquer de mon âge. So once again, MJ, you're fired. Every kickoff.
So I guess we did say hilarious.
Merci, Dennis est déjà parti. Ça fait 25 ans que je connais Dennis. Every time I see that guy, I have a better day than when I don't see him. Il a fait un excellent travail. Est-ce que le son est clair? Oui. Yeah. So, aujourd'hui, je vais donner ma présentation en anglais, puis je vais expliquer pourquoi. C'est une présentation que, quand je parlais à Jack hier, j'ai dit que je l'ai bâtie, ça fait 25 ans, mais je sais que c'est plus que ça. OK? Dennis a dit qu'il y a 32 ans dans la carrière. Moi, j'arrête à 25 ans. That's it. OK? Donc, je l'ai bâti au début de ma carrière, quand j'avais 25 ans, puis il y a 25 ans. Et Jillian, pour X raisons, je ne sais pas pourquoi, elle l'a mentionné, puis j'ai décidé d'enlever la poussière de la présentation, puis je l'ai rebâti pour vous aujourd'hui. Et c'était bâti originalement en anglais, donc je vais le présenter en anglais aujourd'hui. So, stretching. Get out of your comfort zone. That's the theme of today's kickoff. That's what I did in the early 90s when I was doing triathlons and marathons. I know it's hard to believe, because right now, I nurture and nourish my golfer's body. Okay, so that was a while ago. I'm absolutely hoping that everyone knows that's not really me. Like I hope that that's the case. Back in the early 90s, I was doing triathlons, subsequently turned into marathons. And what happened? Most races are on a Sunday. For those of you that know that stuff, and I know that Andre is here. Sylvain knows that stuff. A lot of you know that stuff. Dennis talked about marathons. A lot of races are on a Sunday. On one particular Sunday, they were very difficult conditions. It was raining, it was windy, it was cold, and believe me, when you do any kind of race in that condition, you ask yourself 1,000 times, why the heck am I doing this? It is self-imposed. This has nothing to do with my career, it's self-imposed. The next morning, after this particularly tough race, I got into my beautiful Scirocco. Paula, you remember this car? I love this car. I love this car. I personally kept Armor All in business for 2 years with this car. I was taking care of it. It was unbelievable. Got into the car and started to ask myself that question. Why would you possibly do endurance athletics? And the answer started to come to me. And as I was driving to work, I lived in Rosemount at the time, while I was driving to work, I kind of dictated and composed what I'll call a poem. I don't know if it's a poem or not, by definition, in my mind. And when I raced up to the office and pulled out a piece of paper, and it was 1991, so it was a piece of paper. It wasn't a computer. Looking for a big pen, and I wrote out what you'll eventually see in about 15 minutes. And I never touched it again. And it was the answer to myself as to why I would possibly be involved in something like this. From that, I built a presentation that is my 5 business tips that I learned from training for triathlons. At the inaugural presentation, she's not here today, I think she's out of town, but Paula was here. They were at the, where's Paula? They were at the first presentation, which is very different than today's. I was standing up there with little cue cards and went through the presentation. The reason that I don't really fire MJ on a regular basis, you'll see she built this presentation, so merci MJ. It's not quite the same as when I delivered it the first time, but I built the presentation, did it a number of places across the country, and thanks to Jillian, I dusted it off after about 15 years sitting on the shelf, so I appreciate that because it's been a lot of fun for me. So, everybody know what the triathlon is? Swim, bike, run. You see that picture on the right? Grace took these pictures, found these pictures. As soon as she showed it to me, I said, Grace, I really miss that guy. And Grace said, not as much as I do. So this was me in the early 90s. Triathlons, three sport event, swimming, biking, running. One thing I can tell you about triathlons is they're not fun. Okay? Tennis is fun. Hockey's fun. Triathlons, you cross the finish line, exhilarating. When you've gone over the mountain. Exciting, for sure. Fun, not so sure. So triathlons, the most common, there's many distances, most common one is Olympic, 1.5 kilometer swim, 40 kilometer bike, 10 kilometer run. The first one I ever did was the one on the far right. It was actually a team event. That's my buddy Dan, who biked, and the girl next to me is Caroline, who was swimming for UQAM at the time, and she was our swimmer. I did the run. As soon as I crossed the finish line, there was so much excitement, so much sunshine, it was so beautiful. As soon as I crossed the finish line, I knew that I was going to do triathlons. And I said, next year, I'm doing my own. I'm not doing any more team triathlons. Problem is, I hadn't owned a bike in about 7 years, and I never really swam. Like, I knew how to swim for survival. I knew how to swim to get a Frisbee, at the beach. I didn't know how to swim. So I'm determined, I'm going to do this, headed out to the pool, lived in Rosemount. There's a little pool in the neighborhood, 25 meters long. If you do the calculation, that's 60 laps for 1.5 kilometers, which is what I needed to do. Got in the pool for the first time, never really swam any laps. As you know, the pool is kind of shallow, then gets deep. Right, so I start off, first lap, swimming, okay, this is good. Start to get into the deep end. Oh my God. As I'm staring at the deep end, I've never swam before in a pool. Oh my God. Get to the edge. Start to go back the other way. Oh my God. Whew. Okay, that was 2. Okay, I needed to do 60. I'm not kidding you. That first day, I did 4. I was hyperventilating. And it was not out of being out of shape, I think, as you can guess. It was not, I was hyperventilating, panic. And these 4 laps, I got into the pool, I swear everybody was staring at me. And I headed home, and then next time came back, did 10, next time did 20, and finally, that was a launching of about 7 years where my summers were dedicated to triathlons, and then subsequently, as we had kids, it turned into marathons because it was easier to train for. So I built this presentation. So I put all of this to good use at the time, and I'm hoping that it's still good use for you today. 5 things that I learned from triathlons that I used in business and in my career. Number 1, you set your limits, which is basically saying you have no limits. As Dennis Santelli said, sky is the limit. When I started my career, there's funny things that you remember when you look back. I absolutely had the mindset that 90% of my success and failures were going to be dictated by the decisions I made and the actions I took. I don't know if 90% is the right number. I don't know if 70% is a better number. But I was all in that I was responsible to make it happen. I remember a presentation I saw years ago where the presenter said, if we would do on Monday morning in our business what we promised ourselves that we're going to do Friday afternoon, we'd all be millionaires. We'd all be millionaires. So I decided early to take control of that. So you set your limits is really about looking for breakthrough opportunities. A marathoner, a lot of you know people that have done these types of, a marathoner that shaves 10 minutes off of his or her time never goes back. It's in the bank. From the beginning of time, however you want to define it, from the beginning of time until 1954, no one ran a 4-minute mile. That means running a mile in under 4 minutes. Very possible there was a caveman being chased by a T-Rex, but the timing instruments were not this sophisticated at the time, so I don't know. But from the beginning of time until 1954, when Roger Bannister ran under 4 minutes for 1 mile, that same year, 5 other people did it. That's a breakthrough moment. Since then, 1,400 people have ran it, including high school kids. Breakthrough moment. Never been done. First year it's done, 5 people. Because the psyche, the running psyche of the running world went from cannot be done to why not me? Why not me? So it was a breakthrough moment. Let me introduce you to somebody named Jim Abbott. Jim Abbott, major league pitcher, 10 years, 4 teams. By general standards, an okay career. Nothing extraordinary, an okay career. But Jim Abbott is not judged by general standards. Jim Abbott, if you notice in this photo, was born without a right hand. If Jim Abbott was the best Little League baseball player in his little town, that would have been unbelievable. If Jim Abbott was the standout player at his high school when he was 15, that would have been incredible. But Jim Abbott played for University of Michigan, is in the Baseball Hall of Fame, NCAA University Baseball Hall of Fame, won a gold medal for USA in the Olympics, and went on to this 10-year career with 750 able-bodied players at any one time in the league. Can you imagine what was going through his mind? The self-doubt, the obstacles, etc., that obviously he overcame, because he set his own limits. Can you imagine the outside voices that he was hearing all the time? Can you imagine the delicate balancing act? Some of you have been coaches, I'm sure, the delicate balancing act of having this kid saying that he wants to play in the major league and he's born without a right hand. You don't decide to be in the major leagues when you're 22. You decide when you're 12. So he's telling his coaches and his parents and his friends and everybody, I want to play in the major leagues. And what a delicate balance to not bust this dream and at the same time give a little bit of reality check. Like how many conversations ended with, Jimmy, that's really nice. That's good, Jimmy. Stay in school. It was not possible. It was not feasible in the outside mind, and he did it. He set his own limits, and he overcame. In our business, we don't need any kind of physical prowess, right? Look around to the best people, the people that won awards. Congratulations, by the way, to everybody who won this morning. Congratulations to everybody. But the top people around you, they're motivated, they're perseverant. That's what Dennis talked about. They have winning attitudes, and they're determined. It's not physical. It's here in the head, the heart, and in the gut. So we all have that. We all have that. It's just some people, like they flame the fire of those attributes, and some of us, every once in a while, put it on hold and put a pause button. We do not require any kind of physical attribute. The top people around you, you know who they are. I'm sure that there's something that we would like to clone, to put into our toolkit. That would be helpful for our careers. But overall, they're motivated, they persevere, they have winning attitudes, and they're determined to get it done. So you set your limits. Second one is live with goals. Everybody has heard different definitions of the goal. We've heard the SMART goals and whatever you want to adhere to. I'm going to make this simple that I learned and I use in my training. Specific, measurable, and here's the kicker. Tell the people. Tell the people. When I was starting triathlons, I decided out of nowhere. This was not sponsored by Special Olympics, the first triathlon I did out of nowhere. I decided I'm going to raise money for Special Olympics. So there were no GoFundMe pages back in 1991. So I sent out letters across the country. I guarantee you, Paulo sponsored me way back when. I told the people, everybody knew I was doing this race. Everybody knew I had a target time. Everybody was gonna follow up. Everybody was gonna check up on me as they were sending me checks. And I was able to, you don't have to read the words, this was something that they put together way back then, black and white. It was a long time ago, okay? They put together for my race $3,000 for Special Olympics on that race. And I told the people, it was the #1 motivator. So if you have the goal, tell the people. Subsequent to that, when I was doing marathons, I was able to race the Amsterdam Marathon. I also raised money, for those of you that know me well, you know I'm type 1 diabetic. So I raised money for juvenile diabetes at the time, raised $30,000, went out there with the family. If you look at the far right, that's actually the Amsterdam Olympic Stadium from 1924. I still get shivers. The most unbelievable thing I did was start the race in that stadium, finish the race in that stadium. Dennis talked about the last 5 kilometers being the toughest in a marathon. Believe me, he knows what he's talking about. Exhilarating. Raised $30,000. Once again, I told the people. So have a goal, measure it, tell people. Tell people about it. The #1 motivator in my training, or the #1 impact in my training, was having a specific, measurable goal. Beyond a better training plan, beyond better equipment, whatever else I could have done to help me out. I always used to say that a specific, measurable goal gets me from the edge of the pool to into the pool. When I was starting to progress in my triathlon career, I was not competitive, by the way. This was all with myself and buddies. Lived in Rosemount still. I used to go out to the Olympic Stadium to train at the Olympic pool, whole different ball game, park about 2 kilometers away, -25 like a day like today, get free parking 2 kilometers away, walk through the parking lot, get into this big cavernous building, go into this humid, damp changing room, take my clothes off, put my bathing suit on, get to the edge of the pool. My God, I don't know how many times I didn't feel like doing it. The only thing that got me from the edge of the pool into the pool was having a specific measurable goal to get into the pool. I could have easily gone home at night and said, Grace, that was a great workout without even stepping into the pool. She wouldn't know any different. Get from the edge of the pool to into the pool, you need a strong, specific, measurable goal. I'll tell you another thing about goals. Goals are not objectives, okay? And you'll see by my definition what I mean by that. Goals are not objectives. We all have objectives. We have head office objectives. They get bestowed upon us every year, right, Jillian? Whether we like it or not. And we all need objectives. Objectives aren't bad. It keeps you guided, measuring stick. You know where you're going. You're putting the right things in place to get there. That's an objective. So if your director says to you, I think you can make $80,000 this year or something, that's an objective. And I'll tell you the difference between an objective and a goal. Objective is outside in. Objective is outside in. They're valuable. A goal is inside out. So if we take little Sally, fictitious character, little Sally, long line of doctors in the family, and her parents say she's a pretty smart kid, so when she's 12, they go to little Sally and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you follow the family tradition and become a doctor? And little Sally back and say, hey, I think that's a great idea. What a noble thing. That's an objective. If little Sally at the age of 12 decides, you know what, I admire my family. I think you do great things. I want to help the community. I want to have an impact. I think I want to be a doctor. That's inside out. When little Sally, in both of those scenarios, hits the wall, hits a speed bump, needs to persevere, what are the chances of her persevering when it's an inside out versus somebody else's idea as an objective? Objectives are important. Make sure you have goals, specific, measurable, because that gets the fire in the belly. That gets you from the edge of the pool into the pool. I'll tell you one other story about goals, and Paula will probably remember the story way back when. Although you were drinking a lot at that presentation, Paula. I don't know if you remember much of it. If you have a goal that is motivating and difficult and challenging, you might hit the wall. You might come to points where you just need to break out because it's just too much. One particular race that I did, in St. Agathe. This was a half Ironman. Nothing close to what Andre does in the Ironman if he's still around, but half Ironman in St. Agathe. Tough race, a lot of hills. At one point, did the swim. About halfway through the bike portion of it, there were 3 big hills, back to back to back. And I was not that great on my bike. It was probably the weakest part of my triathlon. Got through the first hill. Okay, wasn't happy. Got through the second hill. Okay, it was getting tough. Saw the third hill. About the first 150 meters of that third hill, I must have quit and not quit mentally 100 times. I'm not kidding. I was gonna walk out. I don't know what I was gonna do. Throw my bike in the ravine and go home. I decided at that point, and it's not a word of a lie, I decided at that point to break it down to the smallest possible increment that I could think of. And I got up the rest of that third hill, 1 pedal at a time. 1 pedal at a time. I never looked up again. I looked down at my feet, and I just said, right, left, right, left. If you have a goal, and you hit a wall, and you need to get through it, and you need to break through and keep on going, break it down to the smallest increment. 1 more contact, 1 more networking event, whatever it happens to be. Don't always look at the big goal. Don't always look at the top of the hill. You know that's where you're going. You know you need to get there. But every once in a while, when you hit the wall, you need to persevere. Break it down to the smallest increments. So live with goals. Third one, exponential growth. I'll explain this one to you. In life, in business, in anything we do, we just tend to get a little better, naturally. Yeah, we naturally get better. You're learning a sport, you just naturally get a little better. You're learning for yen, you're learning to play guitar or something, you just naturally get a little better in business. You just naturally get a little better, a little more clever, a little more smarter at the business. And that's great, nothing wrong with it. So you're riding this line, this red line that you see there, it's a straight line, it's going up, nothing wrong with it. But if you want to take your game to the next level, you can't stay on that line. You have got to step back to launch yourself forward. You've got to step back to launch yourself forward. In training, that's called intervals. I don't know if anybody knows what intervals are. There are a number, Sylvain knows for sure, there are a number of types of intervals. One thing in common, they all suck. They all suck. There's fartleks. If you're in a residential neighborhood, intervals are small periods of extensive effort, followed by short periods of rest. So if you're in a residential neighborhood, you might run for 20 telephone poles. You're just counting. Running quick pace, 20. Then you slow down at a slower pace for 5 telephone poles. Then you keep on going. Another 20, another 5. Like there's a hill near a house in Saint-Julie where I live now when I was doing marathons, nice gradual hill. That's a hill workout. I used to get to the bottom in the evening, put a bottle of Gatorade and a bottle of water at the bottom, run up to the top, high effort, turn around, jog down, take a couple of sips, go back and do it again. When Alec was playing football in St. Bruno, he'd have his football practice in the middle, there was a track on the outside. I used to do track work. And what I used to do is run at a pretty quick pace for 400 meters, then slow down, walk for 200 meters, run again for 400. If that sounds like fun, when you're about 7 circuits into a 10 circuit workout, it starts to look more like run for 400, walk for 200, puke. Run for 400, walk for 200, puke. That's what it feels like. Now, if you do marathons, if you do triathlons or any type of endurance training, it is a 6-day-a-week participation that is required in any training program. Not all year, but when you're training for your season. Which means that the day after one of those workouts, there's another workout. You don't take it 2 weeks off after that. The step back is you have emptied your body. When I would run the day after any kind of interval, my legs would be non-responsive and mushy. My breathing would be labored like I never worked out before in my life. It was crazy. You felt like you were going totally backwards. And what happened after time, as your body started to recover, slowly, you launch forward. And all of a sudden, you're getting faster. All of a sudden, the times that you could not achieve before, whether average time per kilometer, etc., that you were measuring, you're starting to hit them, you're starting to surpass them, and it stays in the system. You're literally launching forward. You're emptying your body. When it recovers, you're launching forward, never to do the old times again. They're gone in the past. So you want to stay on the straight line in training, that's fine, but you don't get faster by running more. You get faster by doing intervals and things like that. In our business, it's the same. In our business, it's the same. Look at that chart. That's MA time, marketing associate time. That's buying a block of business. That's finding a partner. These are all steps back to launch forward. They're all steps back to launch forward. But you have to view it as an investment. When I was on the track, if the only thing I was thinking about how bad I felt and how miserable I was and why is it Tuesday evening and I could be by the pool and having a barbecue and running around a track, if that's all I thought about, I would never do it. But if I had a strong goal, measurable, specific, and I'm doing that track work and I'm thinking about how this is going to make me quicker and bring me closer to my goals, that's why I did it. So it's the same thing. If you're viewing the opportunity to get MA time or buy a block of business or find a partner, and you're saying, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, because you don't think it's an investment. You're thinking it's an expense. All right? It's an investment. Any of those things to take a step back to launch forward. And I'll tell you, a guy like Dennis, I wish Dennis was here because I would have asked him the question. I can ask Paulo the same question. I can ask a number of experienced advisors. I remember when a few years ago, even Alain Saji, who you may or may not know, I said, Alain, any regrets, like in your business, and you got MA time, and any regrets? His answer was simple. Paulo would give you the same answer. Rick Ross would give you the same answer. Dennis would give you the same answer. I should have done it sooner. That's the response all the time. When they find ways to step back to launch forward, I should have done it sooner, because they know it's an investment. Now, number 4, be prepared for race day. There are advisors we know, and some of these advisors we don't like. They get under our skin. Because every campaign, every year, every opportunity, they perform. And they make it look so easy, and they make it look so natural. As I said earlier, for sure, we'd like to clone a little piece of them and put in our toolkit, no doubt. But I'll ask you a question. Are they 10 times better? Are they 5 times better? Are they 3 times better? I don't think so. I think what they do is they move the needle. They move the needle all the time. In training, could I train 10 times more? No. But I can do one more hill workout. Right? I can do one extra workout when I didn't feel like working out. That's moving the needle. Our top advisors are always moving the needle. They are not 10 times better than anybody else in this room. Although if you ask Rick Rossi, he'd say he's 20 times better, but that's just his ego. Let's look at an example of what I'm talking about, moving the needle. PGA, golf, most of you are familiar with it. If you're not, a lower score is better than a higher score. That'll help us get through this slide. These are fresh numbers. I just got these numbers off the internet 3 weeks ago. Brian Harman, the number 100 player in the world, or the PGA, North American PGA Tour, which is not too shabby. 71 was his average score in all of his tournament rounds throughout the year. The number 1 guy, Rory McIlroy, 69.07 was his average score throughout the year. Is that 10 times better? Is that 5 times better? Is that 3 times better? That is 3% better. His average score is 3% better than Brian Harman. Let's look at the earnings. Brian Harman, 1.3 million. That's still not too bad. That's what it takes Paulo to make in 6 months. 3 of those months in Florida. Like, that's not bad. Rory McIlroy, $7.78 million. That is a 600% difference. That is moving the needle. He is not 10 times better. I'll guarantee you one thing. If you get 10% better at what you do, if you get 10% better at networking, if you get 10% better at product knowledge, if you get 10% better, you will grow your revenue by way more than 10%. That's what the top people around you do. They're not 10 times better. They just continue to move the needle. Race day, it's the same thing. Being prepared for race day. When I had a tough race, so they would know this, bad conditions, so easy to blame the bad conditions. So easy to blame the external factors. And at the end of the day, when you're driving home and you feel like blaming everything around you, you realize, everybody else had the same conditions. I wanted to finish in the top 50 and I finished 100. Guess what? 99 people did better than I did in those very same conditions. Right? So you always have to find ways to move the needle. I'll continue this example. Back to that race in St. Agatha, that half Ironman. So I get through the first hill, get through the second hill, before I began my ascent one pedal at a time, and I'm not kidding you. At this point, we're all spread out on the course. Like I'm alone at this point. You're bunched when you start and you kind of get spread out, probably because people were passing me. But we're all spread out. I was out loud swearing at the course organizer. You know how good it feels to swear? Yeah. Somebody you don't know? Like, it's fantastic. I am literally swearing. How can you do this? This is not even human. And I'm blaming all of this on the poor course organizer. Female, male, no idea. At the end of the day, I was not prepared for race day. I think I did okay, but that was a very difficult point of time that I went through. I wasn't prepared for race day. I didn't do enough hill work, enough intervals on my bike. The day before, I could have gotten my car. It's not top secret what the course outline is. I could have gotten my car, driven probably that cool Scirocco, driven and realized I didn't even know it was 3 hills when I was in the middle of swearing at the guy. I would have known. 3 tough hills. About halfway through the bike course. Maybe I'll save a little bit of gas in the tank. Or at very least, I'll know that the 3rd one was the last one. Because when I was in the middle of the 3rd one, I didn't even know it was the last hill. So be prepared for race day. What happens on race day is way more dependent on what you do before. So what happens when you're giving a seminar? What happens when you're on a sales call? You're in an appointment. You're meeting an important client or potential client. What you do before is way more important than the variables that hit you on that day. For those of you, and thank you for that emoji, for those of you that know me at all, know I'm a Philadelphia Eagles nut, right? On December 22nd, the Philadelphia Eagles, trying to make the playoffs, beat my detested Dallas Cowboys. So it was a good day. It was a good day. Are there any Cowboys fans? Yeah? That might explain a lot. Yeah, we miss you in the office.
Don't we still have a lunch for that?
Yeah, I think we have a lunch for that. Yeah. We're waiting for Steve to recover. So they beat the Dallas Cowboys right after the game. Live cameras in the locker room. Doug Peterson, the coach, is giving a pep talk and player of the game and all that stuff. And he said something, this was only 4 weeks ago, that I wrote down right away. He said, we've scored more points today than the Dallas Cowboys. That is why we have a victory and we have the win today. But this game was won Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in practice. So he recognized the only reason that game day worked out the way he wanted it to, and they had more points, was all the effort they put in before. So be prepared for race day, whatever your race day is. Number 5, have a positive, proactive attitude. Stuff happens to all of us, right? Stuff happens to all of us. Have you ever heard the saying, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do, how you react to what happens to you? Stuff happens to all of us. I'm going to propose a theory. Most of the stuff that happens to all of us is in a very narrow range over time. Scattergram of a narrow range. Now, I get it. You win the lottery, you're out of that range. Dennis Santinelli talked about his story today. You're out of that range. I don't wish that upon anybody, so I'm not talking about that. That is unbelievable to get through that. I'm talking about day in, day out, every day, we're in the middle of this scattergram. Everything happens to us, right? All the same. Different date, a lot of the same stuff happens to us. Has anybody, I know that some of the people are starting to read or have read or probably have read in the past, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. I wish I had a nickel for every time I mentioned that book, because I would be rich. I'd be rich now. Fantastic book. He talks about circle of concern, circle of influence. Circle of concern is stuff you have no control over, right? The economy, strife in the Middle East, the fact that the president looks a lot like my golfing body that I showed in that picture. We have no control over that. The pricing of our products, believe me, we have no control over that, right? Circle of influence is stuff you control. Look around, think about the people with the best attitudes around you. Listen to their language. Guess what they think about. And really, I'm serious, listen to their language. I use Rick Rossi as an example. Rick Rossi can tell me about something in a circle of concern, which he has no control over, tell me about it for 5 minutes, and then he's off thinking about networking, going to his next appointment. What can he influence? Think about the language. Positive, proactive people spend their time in the circle of influence. Negative, reactive people spend their time in the circle of concern, blaming outside factors for what's going on. So just do yourself a test. And just listen to the people that you admire the most, and you'll see in their language, in their responses, they spend most of their mind in the circle of influence. The good news, if you have that attitude, you can expand your circle of influence. I'm going to give you an example which is not real, for the record, but I know you all see us in a management team meeting every Tuesday, and we sit around, and I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. Let's pretend that one of our directors, he or she, is a little more negative and reactive. And all they ever bring to the table is the problems, which we probably know anyway. And they talk about what if only, wouldn't it be great? And that's their language, and that's what they bring to the table. And let's imagine somebody that's more proactive and positive, same management team, who's always looking for solutions, understands the problems we have. You can't ignore the problems, always looking for solutions. We can't change the world, but maybe we can change what's going on in our office. Maybe we can use that issue and maximize it somewhere, or at the very least, tamper it down. So you have these 2 people, reactive, negative, proactive, positive. This reactive, negative person has the best idea ever that you can imagine. Best idea ever. They might not even get their message across. Because sooner or later, they blurt out that best idea ever, and people are no longer that interesting. The positive, proactive person has that same idea, and everybody in the room leans forward. And they're already thinking, how can we possibly implement this to make our lives and our business better? So if you're positive and proactive, and you spend a lot of time in your circle of influence, you can actually grow that circle, because that's where you want to spend your time. One last triathlon story. When I started my career, I'm saying my career, and it wasn't very paying, but I got free T-shirts. I got a lot of T-shirts. But when I started my career, my bike was okay. It was okay, but it wasn't really that cool. And I used to show up to different events, and you see all the cool bikes and everything. My bike's not good, because bike is important. Aerodynamics, weight. Although we used to tease each other all the time. You worried about the weight of your bike? How about you don't eat that last cheeseburger and have those 2 beers? And then You can take some of the weight off just by doing that. Okay, good idea. Well, my bike was okay. Started to price out bikes. Trek, Cannondale, blah. And then I realized the bike that I wanted was about the same amount as the deposit that I just made on buying a house. So I quickly determined that I liked living, with the roof over my head as opposed to biking. I like that way more. I like that way more. My point was, it was bugging me for a while, right? My circle of concern. I wanted a better bike, wasn't cool on it. And when I decided that I was not gonna buy a bike, I never thought about it again. I just thought about how can I get faster, better, more efficient on the bike that I had. So don't keep stuff in your baggage. Don't keep on worrying about your circle of concern. You make a decision, move on. All I thought about was how can I use the bike that I have to my advantage. So those are the top 5 tips. Now we've come full circle. We've come full circle back to I just like seeing a picture of my Scirocco. Now I will share with you the original poem, if you want to call that I wrote in that drive to work that day. Stretching. The comfort zone. That place that when you're there, you're the most comfortable. No sweat, no anxiety, no nerves, no pain. You're right at home. Everyone needs one. But beware, what happens when your comfort zone gets too comfortable? Is yours too comfortable? When was the last time you learned something about yourself? Not your product or a topic of interest about yourself. If it's been too long, step out of your comfort zone. When was the last time you did something that you haven't mastered in the past? When was the last time you did something that made you sweat, get anxious, get nervous, or experience pain? When was the last time you took a chance? When was the last time you put yourself to the test? Not the head office test, objectives, etc. You've got help there. When was the last time you put yourself to the test? When was the last time you spoke to someone that was different than you and listened? When was the last time you challenged yourself to stop dreaming and instead go after that dream? How can you ever find out what you're capable of if you never try to find out? Never take a chance. But when you take this chance, this challenge, you run a risk, the risk of failure. You also, however, have created the opportunity of success, and the sweetness of one success is stronger than 10 failures. So step out of your comfort zone, make the stretch. You'll never know what you're capable of until you try. Thank you.